much. Thanks very much, Katie, and welcome to this esteemed panel who I've thoroughly enjoyed already working with. We've got some great wisdom and great advice that I think these guys can share with you about this whole issue of rebuilding and recovery. I think it's fair to say that life is never going to be exactly as it was before, and I think there are also going to be gains from this. It's easy to keep looking at what we're losing and what we can't do anymore, but we're actually innovating at incredible speed. I compare how I was on Zoom in March 2020, when people quite often would come up just being a silhouette with a window behind them, or they'd be in an attic with bits of detritus all over them. And now everyone's got these lovely gleaming backdrops or really beautifully organized areas, and the technology's better. And we've made a quantum leap forward in this period. And I think it's fair to say, as we reopen, as we start moving our venues and our stadia forward, there's going to be many more opportunities to take quantum leaps forward in the way in which we do stuff. So in that context, I'd like to welcome our panel, and I'd like to involve Steve straight away with his extraordinary experience of technology in Stadium, and challenge him to tell us a little bit about how is technology going to move us forward, Steve?
You tell me what detritus is first. Anyway, hi there, good afternoon everybody. Yeah, I mean, from a technology point of view, I think it's fair to say we've come through COVID into very much a different world. You know, from an F&B technology perspective, we consider ourselves safer, smarter, quicker, and a huge appetite now for data as well that's come out the back end of it. I think we can learn quite a lot of lessons from the quick service restaurant sector. And I remember those sunny days in last summer 2020 when we were allowed back in the pubs, and all of a sudden we can't go to the bar, which in Manchester is a big issue, but we were invited to tables where we're now faced with QR codes, and you know, you scan the QR code, you moan to your mates, you know, you key your details in, and before you know it, your pint's there. And you know, second occasion, a few moans, and third, you realise, well, it actually knows who I am, it knows my credit card number, it knows where I'm sat, and it knows what I want to drink. Pretty smart, to be fair. So, you know, I think we've all adopted that as society, and moving forward, you know, you go to a new quick service restaurant, a McDonald's or a KFC, you'll struggle to find a till point these days. You know, you generally met with self-service tills, collection points, etc., etc. So what we try to do is to adapt that philosophy and bring that into the stadium sector, and that's exactly what we've done. You know, and we've been busy. We've installed into 10 stadium in 14 weeks, which was pretty impressive. But I think it's fairly consistent what's out there, you know, in terms of technology is going to move us forward, but, you know, no massive knee jerk. You know, I think the stadium sector itself have got its own challenges around its supply chain, certainly its challenges around staffing. You know, as far as the technology is concerned, that works fine. But it's how we apply new technology to the stadium sector, and let's not forget about training. You know, and let's not forget about coaching, because you know, you've got new people, new staff that are going to be applying themselves to this new science. So, one thing is for sure, that you, with investment in this type of technology, you'll get return on investment extremely quickly. There's definitely an appetite out there for fans coming back to Stadia. They're spending more, they're drinking more, they're eating more. But we've got to be a little bit more resilient when it comes to serving them. Yields for all those 10 stadiums that we came through were through the roof compared to 2019, which was great. You know, and the fan experience, like I say, the technology works great, but you know, we've got to make sure that the staff that's deployed to use that technology is completely aware of what they're using. So it's been an interesting 14 weeks for us. So I've got a short video I would like to show you. Have you got it? Yeah.
It's a new world for sports and entertainment venues across the globe. Managing these complex environments is not easy, and now stadia and venues have to adapt, and the match day and event day experience will evolve post-COVID. As the trusted industry experts, Bleep strives to make the life of stadia and entertainment venues easier through innovative EPOS and payment technology to effectively manage the venue and better meet the needs of fans. Fans can pre-order and pay for their food and drink items on their mobile phone, before they even pass through the turnstiles, with the innovative white-labelled mobile application, helping operators gain sight of what's coming up and drive and reward fan loyalty. Traditional concourse kiosks are converted into collection points, whilst queues are reduced at fixed EPOS terminals as service times are reduced. Intelligent self-service EPOS offers durable, secure and intuitive touchscreen ordering, whether collecting items immediately or pre-ordering for half-time. A slick collection process gives operators sight of what has been ordered, so you can prepare your orders ready to hand over quickly and efficiently, keeping your fans happy. Bleep EPOS terminals boast exceptional transaction times without compromising upon experience, with ultra-fast contactless payments delivering a speedy service in your food and beverage outlets. It's not just in your concourse where fans can reap the benefit from the new world of point-of-sale technology. VIP box guests can use the mobile phone application to order and pay for retail items from the club shop to be delivered to their box or to collect later. Back in the stands, fans can use the app to pre-order from their seat for half-time, so they don't have to leave early and miss any of the action. Queues at the half-time pinch point are reduced, as the pre-ordering options via self-service kiosks and the mobile app allows you to serve customers quickly. Orders can be pre-prepared ready for collection, keeping the waiting times to a minimum and maximising the volume of transactions within this period. Real-time data and metrics provided by Web Back Office gives management a clear picture of sales and stock across the venue at all times. The WBO stock module identifies stock levels at all your kiosks, allowing you to move stock to where it's needed to maximise sales and reduce wastage. Push notifications from the mobile application inform fans when to collect their order, helping to stem the flow of concourse traffic. In some areas, fixed EPOS terminals can be replaced or complemented with the all-in-one EPOS and payment devices, providing mobility and robustness and giving you the power of an EPOS and card payment terminal in a single handheld device. Premium hospitality guests can order and pay for drinks to their table, removing the need to queue and leave their seat for service, providing a first-class experience. The new world of EPOS and payment technology revolutionises the fan experience within Stadia and venue environments, boosting your bottom line. Retail stores can also benefit from Bleep EPOS technology, with a seamless purchasing process in-store or online with our e-commerce integration. Bleep specialises in integrated EPOS and payment technology for Stadia and entertainment venues, delivering a complete, reliable venue solution across your food and beverage, hospitality and retail sales areas. Increase sales, reduce queues, enhance experience and produce happy fans with Bleep. For more information on how Bleep EPOS technology can benefit you, contact the EPOS experts today.
Fantastic technology, and I don't know about you, but I'm one of these people, as soon as somebody asks me to start using an app or doing something differently, my first reaction is I hate it, because we're creatures of habit. I like to have my event experience the way I like to have my event experience, and my first reaction is probably going to be negative. But when I actually look back on the number of things that I now wouldn't do without or would hate if they took them away, I think we're going to see a little bit of that as well. And of course, this use of technology, I did some work with Tottenham, and the employee engagement app that the guys use there for helping keep people on board and keep the staff on board was absolutely phenomenal, because it's so easy with these technology projects and these buildings projects to forget that there's humans at the centre of it, and to see those people as just something that needs to be brought in as a last resort, when actually, in my experience, certainly with Brighton and Tottenham, if people are really on board with you, they will be incredibly resilient and they will handle all sorts of challenges positively if they feel part of the project. And that's really where I'd like to take us and involve Caroline a bit here, because of course, you know, it is still a customer service business. It's a customer experience we're creating. Technology is an enabler. But I'd like to ask you, Caroline, you know, how a customer experience is going to be evolving, do you think? What do we all need to be focusing on to make sure that we're really going to get the best from from COVID, actually.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to take a step back and just for hospitality to adapt, I think, first of all, we need to understand what has actually changed in the period of lockdown. So basically, people have been captivated in their own houses for the last 18 months. Some have been financially affected where they've lost their jobs or they're on furlough and their income isn't there as it was before. You've got other people and companies that have prospered because their business has done really, really well because they've been in an area that is in high demand throughout lockdown. And you've got people generally just been able to save money because they've not been able to go out to restaurants, to bars, to enjoy entertainment that they've been used to doing in the past. So I think we need to take a step back and establish people's lives and how they've changed and also how people's lifestyle has adapted. So people have got used to saving money because they're buying their drinks and their food from supermarkets. They've changed their lifestyle in terms of their home and also their gardens. So people, they've got used to sitting in a nice garden now with lights and fire pits and enjoying hospitality with family and friends at home. So we've got quite a lot. That's a massive obstacle really for hospitality because you're then people are quite choosy and they can't be as spontaneous as they were before because you need to really think about where you're going and how you're going to spend your money and also capacity. So you need to book places much more in advance instead of just rocking up and expecting to get into a restaurant or a stadium or an arena or such like. So I think people need to really think about how and what this looks like.
Yeah, and so when we're running venues, when we're running the stadium, what are some of the things that really need to be our focus, would you say, as a group moving forward? What do we really need to get right?
Well, one of the things is I noticed the guys earlier on were talking about most of their clientele now were new customers, but I think it's understanding and going back to basics as to why the clients that they already had before, what's stopping them from coming back. It's about understanding and making sure that we care about the customer. People have got used to nice hospitality, good food, good wine at home, and it's how do we, and not spend a lot of money, how do we replicate that really in a stadium? So I think it's so important to really go back to basics and look at the staff that we have. You've got staff that have been out of work for 18 months. Many of the staff that you had before would have found employment somewhere else and decided not to come back. So you're now getting people that might be fresh out of uni that haven't got a clue really about hospitality, don't understand what people have paid to go there, and they need to just treat them with the respect and understand what it is that they're doing there and how much they've spent, and make sure that their experience is one that's memorable for them when they walk away, that makes them want to tell people about it and makes them also want to come back again. So I think training is absolutely paramount for the staff, and it's how do you get those people that have decided to work in the arena or a stadium where you might have international breaks and they might not have regular work coming in. What's to stop them from thinking, oh, do you know what, I'll just go to the restaurant in town because it's open 7 days a week, it's regular income. It's how do you make them rock up and actually understand the importance of the experience that they need to be given to the clients that are there that day, regardless of how much money they've spent. So I think it's training them, making sure that they understand what the outcome needs to be by the end of the day for the clients that are there, but also make them want to be there, make them want to enjoy it. So it's building the business culture really, and the culture needs to come from the top. So if you've got a company that care about your clients, that will filter down. And if you've got a company that cares about the staff that are there, whether they're permanent members of staff or whether they're there just for a particular game, everybody needs to feel that they have a massive impact and a part to play. And it's about being consistent. It's making sure that, I've already gone to a couple of Premier League games, and I have to say the service hasn't been consistent for both of those games. And I think it's making sure that if I come back, regardless of how much money I'm spending, I've had a really, really good time. So that's key. But it's also understanding your clients. So we talked about, it's why are they coming? So the ones that we've lost, why have we lost them? What stopped them from coming back? Are they Are they worried about it? Are they worried about the COVID? Are they worried about the massive spread that might happen if they were to come to a game? And it's how do we make them feel comfortable and basically reassure them of the things that we've put in place to ensure that their safety is absolutely paramount. And then it's the ones that we've got back, so the new people that we've got, how do we go out and find more of them? So what made them come to the venue? What is it they like about it? And it's really grabbing the customer insight once people are there as well. So it's how do we data capture? I mean, I'd been to 2 games and I brought 2 different guests. Nobody knows who they were. Nobody questioned or did any data capture at all to establish the 2 different people. Why were they there? I had a couple of kids on both occasions, and it's making sure that the catering adapts to the kids. You know, on one of the games, the child's menu was fish pie or vegetable curry. I mean, I'm not aware of any child that would choose one of those 2 options. So it's making sure as hospitality, how do we adapt the product that we're offering on the day, and also the venue and the suite that I was in on one of the particular games. It was originally an area where it was relaxed. It was supposed to be an area where you go networking and you can mingle with other people. And obviously that's had to change with COVID. So they've changed the area and they've made it a seated experience. But what they haven't done is changed and adapted the menu to accommodate that. So the menu was very much as it was before with bowl food, but that, you know, there was 4 of us and plates were arriving with 3 on. So you're constantly having to then flag somebody down to say, can we have another plate? And you know what kids are like, as soon as they see some pastries, they just dive in and just take all the food. So you're just constantly, it's just making sure that the service is there and we're consistent with offering the right product for the right suite that somebody's in. And it's about building a relationship as well with your clients. So making sure that on a match day or a concert or whatever it might be, that you're actually going around and you're understanding, getting under the skin of, are people having a good time? Is there anything you can do on the day? Because if you can solve a problem there and then, it just makes such a massive difference to somebody actually having to come back or take the time to complain and then they get more rattled about it. Then you'll end up having to refund or invite them back again. So just deal with problems there and then. And I think it's just about making sure that you retain and you grow and you acquire new clients.
Yeah. I'd like to pick up your point, obviously, about culture. That's something that really excites me. And one new stadium project I worked on about 10, 11 years, it was their 10th anniversary this year, as a clue. We did some research while the staff were in the old stadium. It was an 8,500 seater stadium. We were moving to a much bigger one. It's now 32,000. And in our research, we found that a lot of the staff actually didn't want the new stadium. We actually got underneath it. They didn't want to lose their identity. They didn't want to lose the family feel of the club. They didn't want to lose their friends. They didn't want a load of strange people coming to work with them. And when we actually realised that they didn't want it the same way all of the board wanted it and the public in the town wanted it, we decided that we needed to do something about that, and we really got involved in helping them design the culture that they wanted to be proud of when they went to this stadium, and they came up with values, they came up with stories, they became champions of the new culture when people joined them, and they really blew everyone away in the first year. Interestingly enough, the catering group didn't want to get involved with that project, and it was like chalk and cheese. The contrast between the behaviours and the attitudes of the catering staff in the hospitality areas and the rest of the staff in all the other touch points was incredible. And then we finally, managed to persuade the caterer to let us in and do something. We cleared out a load of tables in a hospitality area, put a load of bean bags down, put a red carpet out, and all the staff, as they arrived, we were suddenly high-fiving them, putting loud music on, and welcoming them as if they were the most important people in the world. And we did 45 minutes on how being efficient is being rude, and why don't you express your personality? We were seeing people paying a lot of money for food, and you know, a waitress might be stood there just playing with her hair, stood in the middle of the lounge, you know, because that's how they'd been inducted, that's the only communication that they'd had. And once we let them start using their own personality, they were all over these customers and completely transformed it with just a 45-minute permission to be themselves and to make it their own. And I think it's this balance, isn't it, Steve, between technology and culture and the people side. I don't know whether you want to come back in there and comment on that.
It's fair to say that the fans are traditional. It's fair to say, you know, and them coming back, and we talk about the additional technology. It's about making it a complementary technology. You know, like I say before, we've seen an increase in yield, we've seen an increase in spend within the Stadia, but you know, it's about reducing that queue size. The staffing issue, you're right, and it's when you bring technology together with new staff, it's about the coaching and it's about the technology. You know, and as technology providers, we've got to give something back. You know, my son's a 16-year-old basketball player, and if I put him in front of anybody trying to tell him something, it's in one ear and out the other. But if I put something on his phone, you know, or on YouTube, he'll watch it. And, you know, that's why we have to adapt the way we train people to use our technology. And if that's the way we need to do it, and adapting small videos that are bite-sized that the millennials can look at, then that's something we've got to adapt to.
Definitely. Robert, we haven't brought you in yet. I'm gonna introduce you just shortly, but did you want to comment on anything that we've covered so far?
I think that Caroline has probably captured most of the, I suppose, driving elements of what I've spent the last 18 months doing. We were an early innovator with the digital journey, so I mean, we, prior to COVID, were doing 25% of our overall sales on an app. You know, our employees were partners, they weren't employees. We developed a best experience every time culture. We had CRM and ERP capturing every piece of data that came through the door. We had an anchor sports team. So a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, we had before we ever come into this horrible. So the challenge that we had in Belfast, of course, also we had no competition, none. So the challenge that we had was to go right back to base. I hate the earlier panel had been talking about the old normal and the new normal. I think it's abnormal. I just don't think that there's any sense of normality at all. And in Belfast, what we tried to do was try to create a hybrid. And in creating the hybrid, what we did, we went back to value, to culture, and to people. We went straight back there. And we broke it down into 4 very simple sort of headings. We looked at what our funding subvention was going to be and how generous the government was going to be to get us out of this. We looked at what our talent cost was going to be and what we had to retain, because there were people we couldn't afford to lose, regardless. And if it meant the 7-day restaurant option against the 2-day show, well, you're going to have to find something for them to do, so you had to reevaluate roles and responsibilities. Then what's your big recovery option going to be? Well, you can't wait 18 months. You can't wait 18 months and open with the same thing you left. You can't do it. We dropped 35 million quid in the last 18 months because we were shut. Construction was one of the key industries that was still allowed to work right through COVID. So it was very obvious within this new hybrid environment, right, guys? If you want to fix something, fix it now. So that gave the development teams then the opportunity to go and see what Steve was doing. Right, we have first generation technology, we first generation app, we first generation culture, we first generation results. Away and find out. But the rule of thumb that was put across the whole organization, there's 5 companies on the site, and the whole mantra that everybody was sick so and tired of listening to me, because they would talk about how and I would talk about why. Yeah. And I kept talking why, and they kept talking how, until eventually the penny dropped when how wasn't getting any money. How got no money. If you came with why, you got everything you wanted. If you came with how, why? So that to my mind, and this recovery piece that everybody's talking about, and you know, the colleagues are starting to think about return and all the rest. We've been ruthless by saying, guys, within any fluid hybrid situation, like follow the fashion houses. Suddenly it's fashionable now to wear a pair of what essentially we would call track pants and call them hybrid trousers with gutties and a suit jacket. Think hybrid.
Yeah.
And the other one, and I have two colleagues with me today, they're going to laugh out loud because we were trying to capture this the other day in the bar. But we're essentially going back to the future.
Yeah.
We're essentially going back into a future. We've got to go back to go forward and draw on some of the things that we did do well, but forget the rest of it, because society isn't going to respect or respond to the stuff that was done in the past. They're not interested. And unfortunately, for us, it can be told 30 seconds later on a phone. And that's the new reality. And it has to sit within that hybrid.
True. And I think there was a piece of research with Vietnam War vets coming back from Vietnam where they expected, a lot of them were effectively heroin addicts because they'd been taking opium and heroin and all the rest of it. And the American government expected all of these junkies to come back trying to get a hit, and they set up methadone feeding centers but these guys came back and just dropped the habit. It's one of the most addictive substances there is, but they dropped it because their environment had changed so profoundly. And the one thing we've learned 10 years ago was a club that I worked with, and with Tottenham more recently, the opportunity you have in change is extraordinary. Trying to change people in a stable situation is nigh on impossible, because you talk about a new way of doing things, and the old way of doing things always comes back and starts swallowing them up. Whereas if you've got new procedures, new technology, new premises, new property, you've got an absolutely brilliant opportunity to take the best of what you were and build a future around it. But you have to have that dialogue with people. You have to get them on board, and you have to involve them in that dialogue if you're to get the best out of it. If you just, as a senior management team, go and have that dialogue and then try and present it to the rest of the world, you're going to have fun and games because they're still stuck in the old world. And so I'd like to move this on. It's not just about customers. It's not just about employees, is it? I mean, Robert, we were talking about this, that there's a lot of stakeholders involved in all of this. So let's broaden the focus out a little bit. How do we factor in the needs of all stakeholders in this process?
So, right now, today, everybody's talking about mandatory expectation. And everybody's trying to pass the buck. And nobody's prepared to stand up and say that it's okay to have a COVID passport. It's fine. And it's okay to have a COVID passport because it's part of the recovery process. Now, some people will stand up and say it's an alienation of rights and all the rest and everything else. Okay, so do those people not stop at red lights? Do those people not, do those people drink and drive? It's simply a set of processes to enable a faster recovery. Whether we like it or not, government are either going to abdicate their responsibility for mandating an entrance procedure, an entrance call, and they're going to kick it down to a local authority or kick it down to a venue, who's then going to have to sweat around what their insurance liability is going to be and what the damage is going to do to their brand if there's a super spreader. So that's where MX is right now. The key to it isn't CX. The key to it is EX. If you haven't got an EX brand going forward, you're wasting your time. Because every single piece of integrity and investment that you make has to be delivered on EX. If it's not, you're done. Because your EX is as transferable as new social media or new movement. And if you haven't got that right, now, remarkably, that's the thing that you can do the most about. But unfortunately, what I see happening is there are too many outside influences with development plans and CapEx plans and impulse expectation and new money spend, that they tend to say, oh, we'll be all right, we'll visit that in time. You got to visit that first. The other remarkable thing across this whole period was that government don't actually know what we do. They haven't got the first clue. They have not got the first clue what we do. And they don't actually understand that every piece of infrastructure right across this country is a bricks and mortar hub that's been built by investment. And that every other spoke comes back to that hub. And if you take the hub away, you've got no industry. Now that's the first thing. The second thing is it came about as a sort of a, what did you do in the war, Daddy? When the whole COVID thing started, kicked off, what did you do in the war? And there was a couple of us decided, come on, we'll have a crack at Europe and see what happens in Europe. And we walked up into Brussels and said, how does this work? So, well, who are you? Yeah, well, we sort of broadly have an attachment with the Arenas Association, European Arenas Association, but we've got this idea about arena resilience and how it needs to come back, and we've got this algorithm, which is MX plus EX equals CX, and we think we're a hub, and we'd like to talk to you about how you're going to help us recover. Oh, okay. So, arenas, what do you do? Seriously, what do you do? I mean, is that where football teams go? Is that where pop concerts are? And we sort of said, we met this guy, he's an MEP. I'll tell the story very quickly, I promise. He was an MEP. His name is Thomas Frankowski. And Thomas Frankowski was an ex-Polish football international. That he did. He did. He was a very popular guy. Thomas, I met Thomas, and got talking to Thomas, and Thomas said, I tell you what I will do. He said, I am an MEP, I'm a rapporteur, and we're about to put, and you'll have to forgive me, I need to put glasses on and read this. I'm a rapporteur, and I've been challenged by the EU to put forward a resolution for the impact on youth and sport across the whole of the pandemic. And he said, if you write it, I'll say it. Okay, no more. So we come up with a set of words. Now, I can't do Tomas justice because I haven't got the Polish accent. Anyway, but the EU considers that arenas and stadiums are at the core of the social fabric of sport and cultural ecosystems in our society, and that enabling venues to open is essential to the health and well-being of our citizens and for economic recovery both now and in the future. Okay? Sat in a paper in Brussels. 3 weeks later, they announced a 600 billion euro rescue fund for the whole of the European Union. And they say, right, what's your bid process now if you want some help? We as an industry don't know. We haven't even got an ask. We've got all these countries that will do through European Support, EDR and all that sort of thing. But actually as an identity that's recognized across a continent, we have no presence. We have no stadium presence. We have no arena presence. It just doesn't exist. So all of these people are saying, so what now? And I'm sort of looking at my two colleagues going, well, could you give, well, we've got diligences, we've got governance and all the rest. And this draws me back to the first thing, which were the 4 sort of pillars that we looked at, which was after the funding and the talent stuff and what the recovery options were, we then had to look at how do we tell our story? Social media, how do we get out there as this fixed physical hub where people start to realize that it's central to every other part of the experience.
So can you tell us a little bit about this new customer journey, Robert, that takes into account all these different stakeholders?
Okay.
We've got a nice little slide.
All right, so the first part is to really sort of think about assuming, which is outside of you and me, but assuming that there is going to be some form of imposition and that, there is going to be this safe-o-meter, how fashionable that's going to be and whatever the trigger is going to be for that and how you're going to feel safe. You might wear a mask, you might not wear a mask, you might want to socially distance, you might want. But if it comes down to an abdication of responsibility for the government, you're either going to impose it or take the risk on your insurance premium of a super spreader. However, it starts right from the point of interest, whether that's the phone, your mate, the paper, the fan announcement, the band announcement. That's where it starts. Last panel talked about transport. It's now become key to the journey. The journey has now taken on a physical aspect because people are now going to start to plan to see how they're going to get safely to a venue. So that they're going to factor that into their plan. So the days of you having management of a car park, for example, and not having number plate recognition, or not having prepay access, or not being able to detail levels of exclusivity across the amount of money they think they're spending in their private box, has to be factored into the app. So they have to be able to pre-book it, because once it's gone, and the money's in your bank. The money in your bank's great, but then the obligation shifted from the customer who's giving you the money to you to make sure that the experience is enhanced. You go from there into the complete access management, which is what we call MX, which is what's your access management? Are you going to put 2 rings in? It seems to me that a COVID passport is the easiest way to put the emphasis of responsibility back on the customer. Don't talk to me about lateral flow tests. There's hothouses all over every city in England making them. And you can just order them online for 50p and away you go. So, lateral flows can be faked. What's the application of the technology of it? Now, the key to this is how eventually our ticket providers integrate the safety model. If the ticket providers, simply on the purchase of the app, can introduce a proof portal for the proof of whatever the health status is, we're home on a boat. Because at that stage, you've then placed the responsibility on the punter who's buying the ticket to say he's healthy. Every single venue can seat trace when it sells a ticket. So every single venue can know where and if a third-party report comes back to say that there's been an activation. Oh, well, that was Robert Fitzpatrick. He was in seat E3, and here's his ticket purchase, and there's where he's certified that he was COVID-free. No debate. More importantly, no lawsuit. So the access piece integrates in. Now, access is going to have to be driven by the employees, and in most cases, most of that access is all third-party consideration. So it's not just about you telling your full-time employees you will do or you won't get paid. It's about you trying to convince your third-party providers, your Clean Events and your EventSex and all of those companies to say, guys, you're as important a part of this journey as I am. Because if you don't do your job or you don't integrate into the philosophy that we're trying to develop, we're to come back to Chester, we're falling at the first fence. Haven't even into the building. We're down. We're not getting up again. The ingress, the safety protocols, the bulk of the journey is going to be before you get anywhere near the event. And let's be honest, there's nobody in this room who doesn't know how to run an event. That's the easy bit. That's the bit where everybody just clicks into gear and talks about being positive and talks about this and talks about that. It's the front 5 you've got to get right now. And that's why within a hybrid space, that's going to evolve.
Brilliant. Thanks, Robert. Thank you. I'm conscious that appetites are starting to warm up, but I think we must give the audience an opportunity to comment on this or ask a question or take advantage of some of the wisdom that we've got up here. So is there anybody who's got a question they'd like to raise and have the group comment on? So the point our friend is making, it's not just the technology, it's the whole design of the outlet, it's the whole concept of it. So you're making a point rather than raising a question. Yeah.
The other thing is in terms of queuing as well. It's not that queuing is always slow because the service isn't good enough.
Yeah.
We don't have technology in play.
Yeah.
When you look at these historical venues, the designation points of where these outlets were placed was really around what space the architect had left.
Yeah.
And the scientific approach of how big our
Yeah.
conferences, how many people are there,
Yeah.
how many meter encounters, how many meter encounters serve.
So the issue again of queue design and how design affects queuing. I mean, I will say one thing, we halved the transaction time in kiosks by training the supervisors in how to induct their staff really effectively. That made a huge difference. It also reduced by about 80% the staff turnover. But I know Steve will want to comment on that question.
Yeah, it's a really good point. in regarding the app, it's a really good point because there's lots of I during the lockdown, I probably looked at every single app that was out there in the US in terms of finding one that was suitable, and I think it's fair to say that it's in an individual need. There was not 2 stadium that we've installed in the last 14 weeks that have got the same requirement, because absolutely you're right, it depends on the size, the nature, stadium, arena, counter space, where are you making that order. The idea with this type of technology is not to send a fan to the same bloody concourse he was queuing in before lockdown. The idea being is it's a training of their thinking process. So I sit in the stand, we'll take your order in the stand, and we'll tell you when your order's ready, and then you'll come and collect it. But then, like you say, it depends on counter space. So and it's fair to say that when the stadium opened up, they all wanted new technology, but weren't quite sure where they wanted it. A bit like the foreplay thing, I suppose, isn't it? Anyway, they weren't quite sure where they wanted it, and we had to look at each individual case. And does the fan bring a QR code? Does he bring a ticket with him? So it is on a case by case basis. And I think we've got to be very careful that we don't adapt one type of technology and try and apply it to every site. It won't work.
Or think that it's a systemic solution. Yeah. It's the people as well. It's the design. It's the procedures. It's the whole thing.
You made a good point about it being a hybrid. All this technology is fantastic, but let's not lose traditional, simple values. Let's add to this and let's test the water. Let's use data to show us what the message is, and then we can decide to move forward. Because you've seen some of football clubs kicking off about cashless stadium. The ones that have been most successful at implementing it have brought back the benefits and the values and the positivity of not bringing cash. As soon as you put that statement out as a club, the first thing you're going to get back is aggression from a lot of fans. I'm used to bringing cash, and then you're forever chasing it. So the message is got to be clear.
Great. Folks, I'm conscious of time and I'm conscious of appetite and food. Would you like to thank our panel, Robert, Caroline and Steve, for doing a great job for you there? And we'll hand you back to Katie.